The world is changing rapidly and in some cases drastically. The way we used to do things just won't cut it anymore. Hiring and keeping staff has become an issue so many of us struggle with. Join us today while we discuss staff retention in a so-called post-pandemic world.
You don't lead camp because you love the office. Ultra Camp has everything you need to manage your program so you can spend more time doing what you love. Manage staff, register campers, take payments, and direct communication all in one place.
Welcome to Camp Code, a podcast brought to you by Go Camp Pro. We have seen a lot of changes in our industry over the last 10 years since our podcasting adventure first began. The landscape certainly looks very different as we head into the 2023 camp season, and yet the importance of a well thought out staff training remains the same. This season, we delve into new topics, new ideas for skill development, coping strategies, and ways to support our staff to bring their very best. Yes, the what has certainly changed in the last 10 years, but the why remains the same. Join us this season as we talk about, share, and discover fresh and innovative ways to create a purposeful, thoughtful, and intentional leadership training. And we've got the whole crew here today, so let's start with some introductions. Beth, will you please start us off?
Hooray, we're all here today. I'm Beth Allison. I'm co-owner of Camp Hacker and Go Camp Pro. My pronouns are she and her, and I am a camp consultant and trainer from Ontario, Canada.
And Gabrielle.
And my name is Gabrielle Rail. I'm one of the camp directors at Camp Waro. Camp Waro is an all-girls camp in the Laurentian Mountains, and we focus on creating a positive environment for gender minorities, and we do that while speaking in French and English.
Yeah. And I'm Ruby Compton. I'm the Chief Exploration Officer for Ruby Outdoors. It's a fancy way to say I'm self-employed. I do training and support for camps and outdoor programs in Western North Carolina, in the heart of the Blue Ridge Mountains. And today's topic is staff retention in a so-called post-pandemic world. And we're going to jump right in with our conversation today. So Beth, let's start it off with you. What are some ideas or thoughts you have on how we can be better at staff retention in the wild, wild world we're living in right now?
Well, I found this quote from Kevin DeShazo, and it sort of sums up everything we've been talking about for the last 10 years. Culture is built through influence. Influence is built through relationship. Relationship is built through trust, and trust is built through connection. So for me, if you want better culture, start by learning to connect with your people. And I don't know how many episodes we've done over the last 9 years that talk about building connections with your people. Dozens, I would imagine. So first off, please go back and find those and have a listen. Staff have to feel connected to your place, to your mission, to your people, and to you. There's no other way around it, and it takes work. And please understand, this doesn't happen just because you're a good person or a kind person or you want the best for them. You have to be incredibly intentional about it, and you have to work on it. So for me, I recommend that you spend at minimum 20% of your work week throughout the non-summer months solely on your staff. So this could be 1 day a week or 2 afternoons a week, or like whatever works for you, but you need to block it off and guard it like it's sacred. And this 20% can be spent on a number of different things throughout the school year, like reviewing, evaluating, and planning leadership training for next summer, researching the latest trends in mental and emotional health, taking courses on helping folks deal with grief or trauma, figuring out how to create a new budget so that summer staff are making a wage that allows them to return each summer and go to college and university, reaching out to alumni to step on boards as advisors in their respective positions. Like maybe you've got some social workers or teachers or ministers or doctors. The list is endless. And revamping programs so that you can actually avoid staff burnout and have staff who feel prepared and qualified for their roles. And of course, connecting with your staff at least weekly from the moment the summer is over. So for me, sit down now and figure out all the ways that you can connect with your people through the year. So whether it's letters or emails or videos or voice messages or care packages or regular get-togethers, be it online or in person, large groups, small groups, one-on-one, give them shout outs on Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, your website, all that kind of stuff. And the other thing I would do is share with them in the year the kind of skills that they're going to be learning at camp that will help them as they move forward. So what are they going to be taking away for themselves? Give them concrete examples of all, like the important soft skills, for example, that they'll gain throughout the time with you, and help them connect those dots so that they can go uber prepared to their very first post-college interview, and can share with their potential boss how they've already learned the importance of things like influence and flexibility and teamwork and leadership and, I don't know, communication, analytical thinking, time management, critical thinking. This is what bosses are looking for. So we want to give our staff the language to share these incredible skills that they're now pretty adept at. The other thing I would do is offer webinars or host guest speakers at camp throughout the school year on topics that will benefit staff. Pierce Williams here in Ontario is offering youth nights this year. And there was one a couple of nights ago that was all about the importance of mental health and coping strategies for post-secondary students. And I thought, what a great thing to offer for the community. Anybody could come, but of course for staff as well. And I would, in these conversations, like make time for conversations about life, like the big things, the small things, show them that you care about them as people, not just future employees, so that you don't have to go looking for new hires in 2023, but check in on them during exam time, or make extra time for them if you know they're going through something difficult in their lives, like a death in the family or a divorce, or they lost a pet, any struggle that they're going through. You may feel like you don't have time for this kind of stuff, but let me tell you, this will be the best time ever spent on your job. Staff who feel loved and appreciated and part of a dedicated team of people will work together diligently, will try harder. They'll bring suggestions to you of ways to make things better. If you've got that incredible staff team, and I have said this before, you have a solid foundation for next season. If you develop and support your staff, you're going to have campers who return year after year after year because they've been so well taken care of. You're going to have less of those parent calls that make the hair on the back of your neck stand on end. You'll have less to worry about hiring because they're going to want to return while they can. And they're going to tell their friends about this incredible opportunity and then make them want to apply as well. So you're going to have more money in your bank because the bunks will be full. Your donors are going to see all this amazing work, and the staff will feel secure enough to want to work with you through all of these challenges and to share concerns with you and look for solutions together rather than just quiet quitting or actual quitting. I could go on and on, but I think you get the picture. You can't retain an employee if they don't feel valued, if they're not affirmed, if they don't feel heard and respected for the work that they put in. So right now, if you don't already do this 20%, you need to rejig your priorities. If necessary, share the reasons why with your board or your boss. Create a calendar of things that you're going to do each and every week. It doesn't always have to be big stuff, it could be little stuff. Until next summer when they arrive for leadership training, 20% of your work week on your staff, starting right now, if you don't already. And then tell me next summer if it wasn't worth it. I dare you.
Thanks for kicking us off, Beth. Gabs, what thoughts are coming to your mind? What are you contemplating as you're thinking about retention going forward?
I dare you. I love it. For me, so let's just say you're going to a party and you're really excited to go to this party. It's like a bunch of close friends. And then at the last minute, you find out there's this one person that's going to be at the party and you don't totally get along with them. I almost cannot get back to the same level of excitement. Like, even if I might not interact with this person, I am really bummed out. I almost probably won't want to go to the party, maybe come up with some excuses why I can't make it. Even though I was excited about the 8 other people, that one person is just ruining my evening before I'm even getting there. And I think that staff culture is that one person at the party that's sort of standing in between the joy of the experience, the connections that we can have, and maybe camp directors' experiences of the past couple of years and the staff culture that we've had. and that the things that we've done in the past just isn't working in building connections. And there's this obstacle that's getting in the way. I know that it's not good for me to force myself to go to camp when I'm not excited to go, because I'm not going in it with the energy, truthfully, that I need to do the tough stuff that it takes for the summer. So if I'm having negative or doubtful feelings about our staff, I know I have to I need to walk towards that feeling. So one of the things that I'm starting to do, almost every single industry is having a hard time with staff morale and having a hard time with staff retention, having a hard time hiring. We are in the industry where we actually have access to the age group of that everybody's confused with right now. That's 17 to 21-year-olds, this generation that's baffling so many people. We have direct contact and access to them. And so I think I want to flip that person that's in the room and think of them as the person that's holding the key. They have the access and the knowledge of the why. So what I've done is I've gathered together, this is also something I've said on our podcast many times. So I've gathered together leadership team members that are excited, not about coming up with solutions for our summer to create those connections that Beth spoke so well about and that we're definitely going to be using, but talk about the why is it that we're struggling so much. And so we looked at different groups at camp that we found we had the most struggles with. So it could be staff members that were campers with us before, or maybe it was new staff members that were international, or maybe it was everybody, but try to create more clumps so you can actually look at each group and see what were some of the issues that we had, and then put on your most curious 3-year-old hat. Mine is a tiara made out of little plastic dinosaurs, and just ask why. So one of the words that I've heard, not just within my organization, but lots of other camps, is that our staff are entitled. Well, that's not a very good way of going into your summer thinking, well, this group is just entitled. That blocks us from problem solving. So why are they entitled? And then if it's like, well, they're entitled because everything's given to them. Why is everything given to them? Well, because et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And then get down to the bottom of the barrel until there's a place where we can do something about it. And so some of the things that we came up with is that a really great analogy that one of my leadership team members, Minna, came up with was that, there's that bridge structure where you stack all the bridges together and all the bricks together to make almost a bridge. But if you take that one brick out, all of the bricks come collapsing down. And that's sort of what COVID did. Everything has collapsed around, and that's anything to do with information gap, life experience gap, trust gap in authority figures. And so there's a sense of manipulation. So even kindness sometimes feels like it's manipulation. And so how do we make, so this is sort of the direction that I've been going in. So first for me is we have access to this group. Second, let's grab those people and let's ask ourselves why. And then let's get to a place where maybe we can start tackling something that's like manipulation. And I know for us, one of our top priorities, and this is always a priority at Waro, but we're going hyper supernova priority, is that we're so prepared for staff training that we are present everywhere. Because when there's manipulation or a sense of manipulation, it's because there's a lack of trust. Whether we deserve that lack of trust or not, it doesn't matter. Nobody owes you trust. And so therefore we want to be as present as possible. So this is sort of the first chunk of the pie that we're tackling.
Awesome. And so what I would add to that is I would encourage you to either with a team like what Gabs is talking about, or with your year-round team, or maybe just some like fancy brainstorming of your own, is to think about how you can be creative about your staffing models. Thinking about, like, I balance a handful of different part-time jobs, and thinking about why I stick with the ones that I do, and specifically like the camp that I have worked for the last couple summers, I have been able to essentially say, this is how much I want to be involved. And they've gone, great, we'll take you for those days. And we've been able to draw really clear boundaries around what I can do and what I can't do. And it, I have a program that I run. It's our rafting program, and I kind of take care of the day of logistics, and it frees up our adventure supervisor to not have to have that really long day and worry about a bunch of that stuff. And I love it. I get to bring in fresh energy to the day, and he was able to get a rest on those days this year. And I wouldn't be able to do that if they said, no, you have to work 3 days a week every week, and whatever, you have to work every day. Like, it just would not be a possibility. So I think we need to approach our staffing at camp with much more creative minds than we have in the past. And it's something that I think is really special and unique about where I am in Western North Carolina. There's a lot of camps, and there's a lot of camp people who don't want to live on site, who don't want to work every day. And that may not be your situation there, but the first time I saw a camp bringing in day staff, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is genius, because we are able to keep some people that otherwise would kind of like graduate out of being camp staff. And we're able to keep some really good experienced folks in the industry and working as mentors and guides for our younger staff too. So I know that may not be your case, but I do think there are creative ways to think about staffing. And the other thing is, think about what really realistically will work for you or not. I had a client camp this year that ended up having to hire some much younger staff to work as lifeguards because they needed lifeguards. So they had paying campers, and then they had staff that were getting paid that were the same age. And there was some conflict there. So do think through, like, what are the repercussions of using some of these more creative situations. It doesn't mean you shouldn't do them, but it may mean we need to head off some of those problems that come about. But I think anything and everything's on the table. Like, think about who's not at camp currently, and how, what are the barriers for keeping from them working at camp and getting them to do so? And what are the reasons people are telling you they're not coming back to camp next summer? Let's address those barriers as well, and see if there are creative solutions for getting that person back.
Mm-hmm. And I think also with any of the changes that you might want to implement, even though you're really thinking about your staff and you're really feeling like this is helpful, I've learned over the past, especially the past 3 summers, and I've done this before, but now it's like part of our protocol. I always bring in a sample group to say, what do you think? Because even this summer, I had this, I thought, great idea of making a time off that instead of it being an hour, making it almost 2 hours. And I was like, this is genius. But following the protocol, we brought in a sample staff, and all of them were like, no, bad idea. And I was like, what? Why? And then they explained it to me, and I was like, okay, I see where you're coming from. I would have made such a big mistake if I went forward. But even in the cases where it is positive, because of that manipulation piece, when you have that group coming in and saying, this is what we want to do, if they all say yes, then that calms a little bit the herd down, because you have people that were part of that conversation in the room that can now be part of other conversations if there's, anxieties go up.
Exactly. And if I can just jump on this piece, I was listening to a Dare to Lead podcast, and one of the guests that Brene Brown had said, the world is always changing. And if you think you're going to come and operate your business as if it's February 2020, you're going to get crushed. If you think that you're leading the same workforce, the same people with the same mindset, the same mentality, same desires, priorities, you're nuts. This is a quote. I'm not saying you're nuts. The quote did. And you have to change your way or get out of the way. There's no turning back. This is the big reset. And that's where the hope and opportunity live. And so when I heard that, I paused the podcast. I was like, re-listen to that statement. This is the big reset, which everyone's kind of going, oh gosh, we have to do the big reset, but then finished with, and that's where the hope and opportunity live. So kind of taking that piece to heart. And so we need to be sure that we're resetting, rejigging, rethinking, revamping. This is what Gab and Ruby have been talking about, and asking them how we can reduce barriers to their success and well-being, and then actually act on the information. So Gab's great at having these people gather together and ask them questions. And, you know, she gives them great food and little tiaras with dinosaurs on them and all those things. But asking staff members at this time of the year of various ages, various experiences, different roles at camp, to sit together and pick their brains. Ask for their input, their advice, their insight. I am sure you've already asked opinions of them in their evals on this and the summer on your program and how they were supported through the summer. But to me, this is different. It's a way to hear how they think, that you can retain them through the year and get not only them, but other staff to return in 2023. What do they have to say about this? And some of what they have to say is probably going to be hard, but we actually have to listen. Some of what they tell us may seem insignificant or trivial or even ridiculous, or it's possible that our gut reaction may be to want to say things like, well, I never had any of these issues with this stuff when I was your age working at camp. Why can't you cope the way I did? Do not, I repeat, do not share that reaction out loud, but really listen to what they have to say. We talked about a couple podcasts ago that beneath every behavior, there's a feeling, and beneath every feeling, there's a need. So we need to meet these needs. And true collaboration with our staff requires that we're like open to conflict, and innovation demands that we're open to failure. You know, we've said it so many times, to celebrate mistakes, and problem solving requires an openness to difficult truths. So we need to be open and willing to listen, but also actually hear what they're trying to tell us. So I would say to absolutely include your staff in this incredibly important conversation and in the follow-up work. And don't forget to figure out how you can compensate them for this time, whether it's financially, or you're going to take them out to dinner, or you're planning a party when this work is done. But please remember to show them that their work has value.
All right, I'm going to pause this here so we can get a quick word from our sponsor, and then we'll jump back into our conversation. Do you ever feel like you spend so much time in the office that you've got no time left for camp? Well, the folks at Ultra Camp know you didn't get into camping to do paperwork. So they created software to help camp professionals like yourself handle camp registration quickly and efficiently. Ultra Camp offers pricing that is transparent and flexible, meaning you can rest easy and focus on what's important, your campers. They have no long-term contracts, clear pricing with no hidden costs, low minimum entry, and flexible payment terms. And right now they're offering exclusive to Camp Code listeners. You can download Ultra Camp's free guide, 5 unique ways to connect with campers outside of camp, by visiting ultracampmanagement.com/campcode. Ultra Camp's goal is to provide resources so their clients can spend more time in camp doing what they do best. And if all this doesn't sound like your registration software, don't you think it should? Visit their website, ultracampmanagement.com/campcode, and set up a time to chat. They look forward to meeting you. All right, and we are back talking about staff retention in a so-called post-pandemic world, and talking about what in the world can we do to help keep folks around. And I've been hearing a lot from directors that they are seeing more and more of the one and done, that staff come in, work a season, and then move on to other stuff. And that is not a great situation to have going on at camp. If we can at least get some retention, it makes hiring simpler, it makes training simpler. There's just a lot of reasons to look towards trying to retain staff, especially the great ones. So, Beth, do you have any other ideas that you wanted to share today about staff retention?
Yeah, I just have one. And Gab hit on it already, but I'm going to sort of give you a framework of how to sort of test it. Always check in on your camp culture. For many, the culture at camp is why they come back year after year. And for others, it's why they leave. So just because you had a great culture one summer or many summers in a row, it doesn't mean that you don't need to do anything about it ever again. So just like being incredibly intentional with your staff connections, with your leadership training, with your program development, all of those things, we have to be intentional about every aspect of our camp culture and ensure that we are doing our best to keep it positive. So I have like questions that I would follow if I was trying to sort of assess where my camp culture was. Do we have clear vision, not division? So is everybody on board with why we're here and where we're going? Do we have staff input? Do we put people over policies? And this is a tough line to walk because we need to be very clear and strict with certain policies, of course, that affect safety and follow laws and guidelines. But are we re-examining these policies each year to ensure that we are best supporting our people? Is communication a two-way street? So as directors, we are usually explaining something or sharing something or telling staff how to do something. Have we cleared the way to ensure that they know how they can communicate their thoughts and feelings? And are we open to that? And Gab talked about this too. Trust is key. We have to build those relationships and connections so that trust is present. And we always need to be working on that. You cannot set it all up really well at leadership training and then take for granted that it's going to stay that way all summer long. We want to make sure that we're collaborating over competing. So making sure that that camp culture is really built on that sense of collaboration and teamwork. And of course, giving them support and encouragement along the way. Make sure their strengths are maximized. So how can we give them opportunities to determine their own strengths or show off what they know or practice to get better at things they don't know or don't know how to do well at first? Do we handle conflict positively? So for a positive culture, it's not all unicorns and rainbows, especially when we're dealing with people day in and day out. So we need to be sure that our staff know that there's going to be conflict, that conflict can be good and can bring better things if we know how to handle it, if we're prepped and front loaded for what to do when it arises and how to work through it effectively and respectfully. And that it's okay to feel uncomfortable for a bit while we work through some of these things. And I think we absolutely have to celebrate the successes, big and small, every single day. So if we can check off this list throughout the summer, it's going to go a really long way to providing that positive culture that our staff will then want to be a part of for the rest of their lives in one way or another, whatever that looks like for them.
Awesome. Yeah, so key, and I love those questions. I think it gives a really nice places to start. We can say think about your camp culture all the time, but I think that's an awesome list. And yeah, look forward to hearing people working through that a little bit. Gabrielle, other thoughts that you have about staff retention right now?
I think that, I mean, obviously, like what Beth is talking about with checking in on your camp culture, I think something that first of all, we do have to be picky with the staff that we're picking for this summer. And so I think for me, our priority this year in the fall was to look at our budget and where we could, where could we take finances so that we could set up our staff right for the summer? Where could we borrow from some areas so that we could set our staff up right? So a couple of ways that if you can do this, I think is helpful. One is to cap your camper registration at whatever percentage that makes sense. So 75%, 85%, even 90%. So, and then only fill it up once you have the team that you need to fill it up. Because we know that staff hiring is difficult, but basically if you don't have that right team, then you're just going to be perpetuating the same issues, the same nightmares going to be following you from summer to summer. And if you need to do fundraising for that and bring some alumni in and get them excited about the why, do that. Speaking of alumni, if you can close down one cabin, if you are a sleepaway cabin, and so that alumni can stay there for 1 week and their relief team, obviously, come up with a name that makes sense, but they can take over certain duties. They can help out with activities. They can take over when somebody's not feeling well, but they're those 4 or 5 people that are on camp. And I know that a lot of alumni are actually really wanting to support camps right now. We know we need to set up alumni properly. We need to also front load with alumni, you're going to hear some stuff where the staff are going to be really pissed. Don't take it personally. Do not come to my defense. You can let me know, but they are going through it. And these are the steps that we're taking. I'd also maybe create a care squad. And I know that I have a hard time keeping up with everybody throughout the year. I'm very much, if you're in front of me, I'm like, hello. But if you're not in my front vision, sometimes I forget about you, and it's not because I don't care about you, but I think that what Beth was talking about before, when it comes to care, that can't just be reliant on you and you sitting in front of the TV and writing the cards and mailing it, though I think that's amazing. But having a team that's dedicated to caring for our families, caring for our staff, that's particular and specific to them, takes pressure off of you, so that you can also be part of that team. It doesn't have to be just you. And they're going to see things that you might not pick up on, such as sending out highlighters to all of your students around exam time and saying good luck, with some, chocolates in the package. These are the type of things that they can come up with that maybe makes them feel that we're caring for them and we're thinking of our staff. But I would start with budget, and then I would see how can I make sure that we're creating the team that we need, not filling the spots, so that we're really thinking of longevity for the next summer, the next summer after that. And then just lastly, my staff, when we were looking at that brick that was being removed, that served COVID induced and this gap, we sort of guesstimated that it's going to take about 5 years to get back to where we need to be starting now with those gaps. So next summer, we feel we'll have that CIT group that's going to have a little bit more of that typical summer that is different, but now we're able to adjust. And that's the key point. Now we're able to adjust. And so in 5 years from now, that's where we think we'll be able to line ourselves back up with the staff coming in from our CIT program. And I think that's really helpful to think about, because this is the long game. And so how can we can't go every summer at a survival pace. So how can we reduce our campers so that we have the team that we need? I think is priority.
I think that's brilliant.
I'm going to piggyback. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah.
No, I was going to say rejig, readjust. This is the time.
Yeah. I'm going to piggyback on sustainability, right? Because that's, again, I think one of the big things is that camp is hard and fast, and it's a churn and burn, and people go, I can't do that again. I can't run this marathon summer after summer after summer without more training. So I think in the past, one of the things that we've done, and it's certainly, I felt like my most successful summers at camp were the summers where I was able to kind of forget about my life outside of camp and just be wholly immersed in camp. And I do not think that is a realistic expectation for our staff anymore. There may be folks who still want to do that, can do that, but I think the vast majority of them are going to be maintaining relationships, commitments, responsibilities outside of camp. And so one of my biggest tips that I can offer to any camp, it's not just about retention, but it's about really actually supporting staff mental health, is to make sure you have some private space at camp that your staff have access to. Like maybe they just sign up for it or whatever. I think about the camp spaces that I've worked in, and if I needed a private space for a phone call, like it wasn't the staff lounge because anybody could come in at any point in time. And so I'm typically then having to go to a director and be like, hey, I need this private space for this phone call or this class. Is there an office I can use? So now I'm sending an admin staff member out of their office so that I can do this phone call. And I think about, what if this phone call is like a telehealth call or with a therapist, right? These may be things that people are not willing to, or really uncomfortable asking for that space to be held for them. So this year, what if instead of making people have that uncomfortable conversation or think about it, or not even maintain their therapy or their doctor's appointments or whatever because they're coming to camp, or not come to camp at all because it is incompatible with working at camp. What if we have a space, think like the library study room, that, I don't know, we had those in all the libraries like that I ever went to school with, that there'd be these little private rooms and you could just sign them out and that was your time, and you can meet with a group or take it, for yourself or whatever. But I think we need to create more spaces like that at camp that staff know they have access to, that's going to give them more flexibility in making plans for those online classes they have to take, their therapy appointments, their calls with doctors, their calls with family that they may not necessarily want to have a whole bunch of other people listening in on. And this is not just overnight camps. I think it's also day camps too. Think about how a staff member may be able to, instead of having to drive to their therapist's office, but rather if they know they have this private space at camp, they can pop out for an hour, do that call, or an hour and a half with some time on either side, and then go back into camp. And now you don't have to find a sub for them all day, right? Or that whole half, a whole half of the day or a whole day because they had to take the day off to go do these things. So I just think we need to create more time and space for staff to have lives, because I do think there are more commitments that folks have.
Yes.
And
Yes.
and because we're so connected, and it's a lot easier to have 8,000 commitments because it's all coming in on your phone, and it's just, I think if you are telling people in an interview and they say, well, what are you doing to support staff mental health? When you can say, hey, we have private spaces that staff can check out so they can continue with their mental health care throughout the summer, man, sign me up. Like, I want to go work at that place. So I hope that that's something that folks will implement this year and going forward. Small thing, but I think it can have a huge impact on people being able to take care of the things they need to get taken care of at camp.
It's brilliant,
It's
Ruby.
so-
Sorry, Gab, you want to go ahead?
I was just going to say, and it's also concrete, there's, when we talk about trainings and we talk about, programs, these all important, but this is sort of physical and concrete. And I think people can just, visualize it and see it and feel it. Just that little act.
And I think it's part of that rejigging and resetting that I've been going on and on about in this podcast. Is when I was directing, it was easier on me if the staff did what I needed them all to do when I needed them to do it. So it was a whole lot easier if I had 80 staff members who were at all the trainings and all the, the weekends, and nobody missed anything. And I didn't have to go back and, okay, Ruby couldn't come because of this, and so I have to now fill her in on everything. Like, it was easier. But part of the problem that we have with staff is they can't work that way anymore. A lot has happened since I was directing, and especially in the last couple of years. And it might be more work for us now to think of them as more well-rounded people rather than just camp staff who fit into this slot. But in the long run, it's going to make life easier for you, better for your staff, and therefore better for your campers, better for your parents, better for your donors, that whole domino effect. If we start thinking of them as a whole person and try to figure out ways to support each of them and their needs. And I think offering that space, Ruby, is brilliant. It's just one way that you're putting their needs in there and saying, you don't have to just throw the rest of the world away, particularly at overnight camp, and just focus on overnight camp for 2 months. And then you can go back to your other life there. It's not going to work anymore.
It's not. And it's one of those small examples of, our toolbox has got to be updated. And I know all three of us feel this, like, yeah, we know the toolbox needs to be updated. I'm not 100% sure what those tools are going to look like, and that's okay. But I've found, just in having conversations with directors, that, just hearing what some of the common problems are, we are a creative bunch. We can solve these problems. But if we all just kind of sit in our silos and go, oh, this is my problem, it's only my problem, I can't figure it out, like, we're never going to get anywhere. So talk to other professionals in the area, get on networking events, listen to podcasts, like, let's have more conversation around it and share what we're discovering, so that we can help solve some of these problems, or at least try some stuff out, and learn from each other's mistakes too. So I'm curious if either of you all have anything else you wanted to add on this topic before we move on to our recap.
I'm ready for the recap.
Yeah, I think we can go into so many things such as mental wellness and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But for now, recap time, because we have so much stuff to look at. My goodness. So I'm giggling because my list has stars beside it. When I put a star, that means I want to do that for Camp Waro, and everything has almost a star beside it. And I just caught myself seeing that. I'm like, I need to re-listen to this podcast. So we'll start off with that. Connect with people, connect. And one of the ways that you can do that is first inform yourself. So take courses, look at your budget, get some alumni support. How do we want to not only connect with our staff members this summer, but how can we do that as a year-long mission? And while you're doing that, maybe get some help. Develop your own care squad, because when we're trying to connect with our staff members, we can't do that alone. And when we are looking at not doing things alone, maybe ask yourself, why is it that staff are having such a hard time? Put on your 3-year-old tiara and get curious. And when you'll hit that why, when you start to feel like, I can do something about this. And so why, and ask our team, why is this happening? And once we get to that team, then we can come up with solutions, such as some of the solutions that Ruby was talking about, is maybe hiring day staff, creating a private space. Also, a fun sentence by Ruby today was turn and burn. I will be using that myself. And as Beth was talking about, we need to look at the big reset. We know that behaviors but no, below behaviors are feelings, and below feelings are needs. And what we're trying to find out is the needs of our staff members. And the only way we can do that is by working with them, talking to them, and adjusting, rejig, and reset. And that is our recap for today.
Yeah, thanks for doing that, Gabs. And thanks to all of you all for listening. We'd love for you to get involved with the podcast. So tell us your thoughts on this episode. What are you doing for staff retention, or thinking about doing for staff retention? You can use the hashtag Camp Code on your social media of choice. You can also tell us what topics you'd like for us to discuss, any guests you'd recommend we have on the show, any great leadership training tips you have to share. We'd love to hear from you, because we are all about sharing in this industry. And if you have found this podcast to be useful, please leave a rating and review for us in your podcasting app of choice. Your feedback helps keep the show going and helps keep people finding the show who need it. So before we tell you what's coming up next, we'd love to just let you know how you can get in touch with us. So Beth, where can folks reach you?
Our website is gocamp.pro. My email is beth@gocamp.pro, and I'm on Twitter @Topaz.
And Gabs?
You can see where I work at waro.com, and you can also message me at info@waro.com, OUAREAU. And you can also follow me on Instagram at Gabrielle Rail, and Rail takes 2 L's.
Beautiful. And you can email me, ruby@rubyoutdoors.com, or find me on Instagram @rubyoutdoors, or on Twitter for as long as it lasts. I don't know how much longer that's going to be, @RubyLynn85. I might be telling my Tumblr going forward. We'll see what happens. But
Yeah.
For our next podcast, it's going to be a surprise. Yeah, that's right. As
We're working some things out.
Yeah, as I said earlier, it's a brave new world out there, and so we've been talking about wanting to figure out what's our best move for going forward for best serving the industry. So we will be back with more episodes. Don't worry, but we're not ready to announce the topic yet. So there it is.
Got to rejig. We got to turn and burn.
Cool. A little reset and data collection.
Yeah, exactly.
Our final segment on each podcast is a best practice for leadership training. And we would love to hear some of your most memorable moments or most effective tips. You can tell us what they are using that hashtag Camp Code. And Gabrielle has this week's best practice.
Mm-hmm. So you've planned staff training. Your leadership team members have been assigned and have been given time to prep their sessions. But It is the day of one of those nervous new leadership team members, and they just need a little extra time to prep, and you want to give it to them. But your priority is for your leadership team members to create those connections with your staff members. How do we get around this? Well, my thought is, why not set a goal to create 5, 10, 15 instructional videos where your leadership team before camp creates an instructional video on the session that they are going to run. Why is this helpful? For two main reasons. One, that leadership team member is doing the muscle memory that they need to do to practice giving that session. Two, they would have to create a PowerPoint because obviously we want visuals in a video that they can use at camp, so they won't be last minute making that. And then three, you actually are going to start to create a library of these sessions so that if staff members are missing certain sessions for the summer, you can use those instructional videos. For me, this is just all a fail safe in case some of your leadership team members or your staff members get sick during staff training. But more importantly, I think even for myself, I know that as a speaker, when I go to conferences, when I speak on certain subjects, if I do it once, I have my prep time is so large, but by the third or fourth time that I do my presentation, it's almost, just a review, and my confidence is so much higher. So maybe provide that same experience for your leadership team so that their prep time during staff training isn't as large, and they can have confidence when they go into those sessions.
Brilliant. Yeah, and all those benefits are so on point. Having that library, having extra prep, it's genius. Thanks for sharing, Gabs. Camp Code is part of the Go Camp Pro podcast network. Check out all our other podcasts at gocamp.pro/podcast. There's 7 podcasts in all, each with a different focus to help as many camp folks as we can. Give them a listen. And from all of us here at Camp Code, thanks for the listening, friends.